am Cheri Beasley, and I am so honored to tell you that I'm the 29th Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina. I have to tell you, this has been an amazing year for the Supreme Court. Last year, the court commemorated its 200th anniversary. And so you can just imagine how amazing it has been to lead the court in the court's 200th year anniversary. And you can also very well imagine that the court of today is not the court that it was 200 years ago. So we've come a long way, thankfully. I'm so delighted about that. I want to tell you a little about what the Chief Justice does. And then I'm glad to take questions following. The Chief Justice leads the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And the Chief Justice also leads the judicial branch of government. And so in the very same way that the governor leads the executive branch, the Chief Justice leads the judicial branch of government. Now we have, I know I saw Judge Brown here. Are there other judges here this morning? And I know there are other judicial branch employees here this morning. Stand up, Amanda. Are there other judicial branch employees? I'm glad you all know who they are. There are 6,500 judicial branch employees and leaders and judges and district attorneys and clerks of court all over the state of North Carolina. We have over 117 court facilities. There are places in North Carolina, believe it or not, that don't hold court in courthouses. There are folks who are displaced because of hurricanes and other reasons. And so we have 117 court facilities. And so it's the Chief Justice who leads the Supreme Court. We hear the same kinds of cases as my colleagues, but I lead that court administratively. And then I also lead the judicial branch of government. I'm excited that we not only have Judge Brown here today, but I am also very delighted and honored to be in the presence of many clergy members. I've met many of you this morning, and I appreciate your work as you go to the throne on behalf of the people of Rowan County and those of us who are in service. And I know that there are also veterans here as well, and so I thank you for your service as well. And I thank you for being great members of this great county. And so we have a great court this year, and last year the court traveled around the state of North Carolina in the commemoration of the court's 200th anniversary. And guess where one of the places where we came? We did. We were very blessed to hold court here in Rowan County here in October. And as you can well imagine, out of 100 counties, we will not be able to travel to all 100 counties in a 3-year period. And so we'll probably make about 22 or 23 counties. And so we're very glad that we were able to hold court here in Rowan County in October. I want to share with you as well, as a part of the court's 200th anniversary celebrations, there are 2 ways in which, if you are interested, you can know more about the court. There is a documentary that is shown on UNC TV, and you can just Google it for the 200th anniversary of the Supreme Court of North Carolina, and it will tell you about the history. It's a beautiful documentary. And there's also a wonderful exhibit at the North Carolina Museum of History, which will be there through May of 2020, and you can also learn more about the court there. So as a part of my work as the Chief Justice, it's important that I set policy, and so I can tell you that before I became the Chief Justice, we had no policy around parental leave. And now that I'm the Chief Justice, we have a wonderful parental leave policy, which we believe is fair, which will allow judicial branch employees to have 8 weeks of paid parental leave at the birth or adoption of a child, or even in foster care situations. So we're very excited about that. You know, I know you have heard a lot about funding for the state government, and you know that North Carolina doesn't have a budget at this time. There's not been a budget passed. You've heard about the legislature being in session, about them discussing matters around the budget, and you know the governor is waiting for the budget. Well, the Chief Justice is too. We're looking for funding in the very same way as the other branches of government. I'm delighted to tell you that our really wonderful court leaders who are here today and all across the state of North Carolina do a whole lot with just a little bit of funding. One of the things that we are doing is we are going to completely revamp our technology system. Now this is important because it is important for people who have and need the services of the courts to be able to access the courts in a very different kind of way. In a place like Rowan County, you can fairly easily get to the courthouse. But there are places across the state of North Carolina that are in much more rural places where it's hard to access the court. The courthouse can be 20 miles or more away from where people actually live. And so one thing that technology will do is allow folks to be able to access and do much of their business rather than actually showing up at the courthouse. Now, for those of you, I know there are a few techies out here, it's important to know that the court system uses a system called DOS systems. It's a very old, I hear some chuckles, and that's usually what I get in most places when I talk about our DOS systems, because they are so old that most of the folks who are able to repair them have all retired. And so we do need greater technology so we can be a better service to the people across the state of North Carolina. The other thing that we're asking the funding for is for drug treatment courts. Everybody is aware that there is an opioid crisis, not just in North Carolina, but across the state of North Carolina. But the reality is we have been in crisis for some time. There are folks who are around us and in our families and our communities who do have substance abuse issues. And we believe that the court system ought to be a part of solution making for those families. We believe that there ought to be treatment and accountability. Folks commit crimes, there ought to be some accountability there, but we also believe that there should be structured treatment programs through the court system to help people get back on their feet. Out of the 100 counties now, we only have 23 drug recovery courts in North Carolina, and we need drug recovery courts in every single county across the state of North Carolina. People are definitely in need and in trouble. This is something else I hope you will be excited about. We have a whole new Faith and Justice Alliance. So I'm also glad to see the people of the clergy here this evening, because I want you to know about the Faith and Justice Alliance. And so what will happen is, let's just say that somebody comes to the bishop and says, I don't have a place to live. And one of the things the bishop will do is talk to that person about housing and where they can live. But a lot of times, what we want to do is train clergy to hear about legal issues. If you don't have a place to live, it can determine where you can live the next time. If you've been evicted, you might not be able to lease or rent a place. If you have custody issues, where you live is a legal issue. And so we want people to know about that. We've already been partnering with places of worship across the state to hold legal clinics in those churches. We're bringing in the DA and the judges. And we're really excited about the fact that they've been able to move some cases. In North Carolina, about 1 million people are driving with their licenses revoked. We're in the 9th largest state in the nation, have a population of roughly 9 to 10 million people, and about 1 million people are driving with their licenses revoked. Not because they have in some way committed a crime, but because they were assessed a fine or a fee initially when they had a ticket or something like that and they couldn't pay it. The fines and fees snowballed, and then it's not uncommon for folks to have their driver's licenses suspended for 10 and 15 years. Well, a lot of us take for granted having a driver's license, but if you don't have a driver's license, it can impact whether or not you can have a job. It can impact whether or not you can get a barber's license or a beautician's license. It can impact whether or not you can rent a place to live. And so having a driver's license, and certainly, of course, being able to get to work, certainly legally. And so having a driver's license is a really big deal. We're doing driver's license restoration clinics in places of worship. There are about 1 million people in North Carolina who have been charged with a crime, but not convicted. And they are eligible for an expungement and don't know it. And so we're creating ways that we can make sure, number one, they have notification that they may be eligible. And also we're holding expungement clinics in places of worship. And so while we need more funding in the judicial branch, we're also coming up with creative ways to make sure that we can still be of service in the way that we're supposed to be as members of the judicial branch. And the other thing that I hope you will be excited about is that we are doing school justice partnerships. You have one here in Rowan County. We're very excited about the fact that You may know that in 2019, the legislature passed Raise the Age. We were the last state in the nation to pass Raise the Age legislation. And what that means is if there's a juvenile or minor who is under the age of 18, their case, generally speaking, will be held or handled in juvenile court as opposed to adult court. Then that's generally speaking. Some of those cases will be bound over, and we know the more serious cases will not be handled in juvenile court. But this is important because we know what it's like and what the future of young people will be if they get a blip on their record and that blip follows them for the rest of their lives. And so we want to be mindful of that. We're really excited about the fact that judges and district attorneys and clerks of court and law enforcement and communities have come together, public health officials, around determining for themselves what school justice partnerships ought to look like. And what we have found already, when I became the Chief Justice in March of this year, we had only one school justice partnership. We now have 14. We've got another 44 that are about to be up and running, and we will have 100 school justice partnerships before the end of the year. We're very excited about that. It will mean the difference between having young people who have a chance to be successful and not to be successful. So already in this very short period of time, we're beginning to see a reduction between referrals from the school system to the juvenile justice system in about 60%. Wow. That's pretty great. That's pretty great. So we're excited about all of us partnering and really coming together and thinking about how young people can be successful. And I will tell you what the difference I think has been. We've talked with a lot of law enforcement officers, and their roles have changed. It makes sense that law enforcement officers are in our schools. Public safety is a real issue, and so we're glad they're there. But the other thing that law enforcement have found is that their roles have changed because they have created more of a mentoring role for young people. There are a lot of young people who don't have solid families. And sometimes we take that for granted, but there are a lot of young people who can't say in the way that an adult will say, I am hurting, there are things happening in my life, I don't know how to express that to you, and so I'm acting out in some kind of a way. One of the other things that's happening, so law enforcement have been key in this, judges have been key in this, DAs have been key in this. Another thing that's happening is we've begun to ask why. Why are young people getting in trouble? And what is it that we can do about it? In North Carolina, 1 in 5 children is hungry. That's an access to justice issue. If a parent or caretaker is not well or there are issues in the home, that can be an access to justice issue. And so one of the things we're doing is looking at what kinds of challenges young people face in order to make sure that we can address those needs to make sure that they can be successful in school and live productive lives. And so you owe great thanks to your leadership here in Rowan County, your judges and your DA, for being able and willing to bring these partnerships together. The school systems as well, they've been, everybody's been really amazing here and across the state of North Carolina. So let me tell you, as I've talked with you some this morning, some of you have said, number one, do you have an election this year? I do. Number two, you have said, do judges run for election? In North Carolina, every single judge is elected at some point. Even if he or she receives an appointment initially, you must be elected at some point. And so I'm very grateful that Governor Roy Cooper saw fit to appoint me to serve as Chief Justice on March the 1st of 2019. But he also expects me to win my election on November the 3rd, 2020. That without you. This is a statewide election. Everybody knows what's at stake in these Supreme Court elections. We know that there is a U.S. Supreme Court and they bring down law that applies to all of our lives, but other thing that people also know around the nation is that the decisions that impact your everyday lives happen in state courts. We make decisions about families, we make decisions about communities, we make decisions about small businesses, and those are the kinds of decisions that impact your everyday life. Now let me tell you how I know that everybody around this nation knows that that is indeed the case. We are very much aware that in this year, in my race that national conservative groups will spend about $3 to $4 million against Cheri Beasley. Well, I will tell you, when I ran in 2014, thankfully I was successful to remain on the Supreme Court. About $500,000 was spent against me at that time. And y'all know what? I was insulted. I'm like, how can these national people decide that they're going to spend this money against me? And the more I thought about it, I actually became honored. Because what I realized is that they knew I wasn't going to compromise my integrity. They knew I was going to make decisions based on the law and not based on somebody else's agenda. So I hope that you here in Rowan County will send the message not just to the people of North Carolina, but to everybody in this nation, that in North Carolina, justice will not be for sale. And so they can spend the $3 to $4 million. It will mean that I need to raise $2 to $3 million. And so I'm asking for your help and your support in that. And I greatly appreciate all of you have already reached out to say that you're willing to help us do that. But I also know that Democrats can do things a little bit differently. And I know that you know how to spread the word. And I know that you will tell your neighbors and you will tell the people in your places of worship and you will tell folks in your civic organizations that this election is important. Now, I keep hearing that the election in 2020 is the most important election of our lives. But the reality is, every election is the most important election of our lives. And so I hope you will tell your friends to vote for Cheri Beasley. I hope you will also ask them to vote for Mark Davis. He is on the Supreme Court now, and we want to keep him there. And I hope you will also ask them to vote for Lucy Inman. She is on the North Carolina Court of Appeals, and she is running for the Supreme Court. There are about 8 of us who are running for appellate judgeships, which means we run statewide. I promise you we will provide a list of the folks that we hope that you will indeed support and spread the word about. So I will stop talking for now, and I'm certainly glad to take questions.